Can you imagine spending 2 decades building a life with someone, only to discover they've been harboring the most monumental secret imaginable? A secret that rips through the very fabric of your reality and makes you question every single memory, every shared laugh, every quiet moment you thought was real. Because that's exactly what happened to me. My wife, the woman I loved, the mother of my children, had a son. A grown man, 20 years old, who I never knew existed. And I found out in the most horrifying way possible. Tell me, if your entire world came crashing down like that, would you have done what I did? Would you have been able to look at her the same way, knowing such a profound lie existed between you? Let me take you back to the beginning, to a time when my life felt predictable, happy even. I met Sarah at a local charity event. She was vibrant, with a laugh that could light up a room, and a kindness that seemed to radiate from her. I was instantly smitten. We dated for about a year, a whirlwind of movie nights, long walks, and getting to know each other's quirks. She was open about her past, or so I thought. She told me she had a difficult relationship with her family, which explained why I didn't meet them often. She mentioned a previous serious boyfriend, a college sweetheart who had broken her heart, but she always brushed off the details, saying it was ancient history and not worth dwelling on. I respected that. Everyone has baggage, and I was just happy to have found her. We got married 2 years after we met, a beautiful, intimate ceremony that felt like the start of our forever. A year later, our first daughter, Emily, was born, followed by our son, Ben, 3 years after that. We built a beautiful home, filled with love, laughter, and the usual chaos of raising 2 active kids. I worked hard. Sarah was a wonderful stay-at-home mother, and our life, from my perspective, was idyllic. We had our ups and downs, of course, every marriage does, but we always navigated them together, or so I believed. There was always this tiny, almost imperceptible wall around certain aspects of Sarah's past, especially when it came to her younger years. Whenever I tried to dig a little deeper, she'd become quiet, change the subject, or dismiss it with a wave of her hand and a wistful smile, saying, "Oh, those were just my wild years, nothing interesting to tell." I just assumed it was youthful rebellion or a past she wasn't particularly proud of, and out of respect for her privacy and our current happiness, I never pushed too hard. It was a trust thing, you know. You trust your partner to share what's important, and if she wasn't sharing it, it must not be important to our present. Our children grew up, and our lives revolved around their school events, sports, and teenage dramas. Emily was a budding artist, thoughtful and introverted, while Ben was a boisterous, outgoing athlete. We were a normal, happy family, or so I thought. The cracks in my perfectly constructed reality began to show during a particularly rough patch for Sarah. Her mother passed away unexpectedly. It was a difficult time for her, and she retreated into herself, grieving deeply. I tried my best to support her, offering comfort and space. It was during this period, about 6 months after her mother's death, that things took a bizarre turn. Sarah started receiving strange calls she would always take in another room, speaking in hushed tones, her voice laced with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher, a mixture of sadness, anxiety, and something else, something I couldn't place. When I'd ask her who it was, she'd simply say, "Oh, just a distant relative," or "someone from work." Her answers were vague, and her eyes would dart away, which wasn't like her. Sarah was usually very direct. Then the envelopes started arriving. Thick, brown envelopes, always addressed to her, always with a return address I didn't recognize, usually from out of state. She'd intercept them from the mail, almost snatching them before I could see them, and disappear into her study, emerging later with puffy eyes and a strained smile. I was worried, of course. I thought maybe she was secretly dealing with something serious, maybe a health issue she didn't want to burden me with. I tried to talk to her, to get her to open up, but she'd always assure me everything was fine, just grief-related stress. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but a knot of unease began to form in my stomach. The tension in our house grew, palpable but unspoken. Sarah was becoming more withdrawn, more secretive. Our intimate moments grew colder, and she seemed to be constantly preoccupied. I found myself walking on eggshells, wondering what was really going on. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. Sarah wasn't expecting me. I walked into the living room and found her on the phone, her back to me. Her voice was trembling, urgent. "I can't tell him, not yet." She whispered into the phone, "He'll never understand. I just need more time. Please, don't show up here." My heart stopped. My first thought was an affair. The classic scenario, right? The secretive calls, the distant behavior. A wave of nausea washed over me. I stood there, frozen, listening. She continued, her voice breaking, "He's old enough now. He deserves to know." But how do I even begin to explain 20 years of silence? 20 years of silence. That phrase echoed in my mind. It didn't sound like an affair. It sounded deeper, older. I quietly backed away, trying not to make a sound, my mind racing. I spent a restless night, pretending to be asleep, while my mind spun theories, each more disturbing than the last. I loved Sarah, I truly did, but this level of deception, whatever it was tearing me apart. I knew I couldn't live with the uncertainty. I had to know. The next morning, after Sarah had left to run errands, I did something I'm not proud of. I went into her study. I told myself it was for our marriage, for my own sanity. Her study was usually immaculate, but this time there was a small stack of papers on her desk, half hidden under a book. My hands trembled as I picked up the top paper. It was a birth certificate. My breath hitched. The name on the certificate was Daniel James Peterson. The mother's name was Sarah Elizabeth Peterson, and the date of birth, it was exactly 20 years ago. My hands started shaking uncontrollably. Peterson, that was Sarah's maiden name. This was asterisk, her asterisk son. A son born 20 years ago. My world tilted on its axis. 20 years, 2 decades. She had given birth to a child, a son, before we even met, and she had kept him a secret from me all this time. The other documents were bank statements, showing regular, substantial transfers to an account in another state, an account under the name of Daniel Peterson. There were also letters, heartfelt, desperate letters from Sarah to Daniel, expressing her regret, her love, her hope that he could forgive her. One letter detailed her reasons for giving him up for adoption, explaining she was young, alone, and felt she had no other choice. She wrote about watching him grow from afar, receiving updates from the adoptive parents, and how her mother, her recently deceased mother, had helped facilitate the entire arrangement, keeping it a secret from everyone, including me. Her mother had apparently been the primary contact for Daniel's adoptive parents, acting as a buffer, and her death had obviously disrupted that system, forcing Sarah to finally confront the truth. I felt a cold rage settle over me, mixed with an unbearable pain. It wasn't just the fact that she had a son, it was the 2 decades of deliberate, calculated deception. Every "I love you," every shared secret, every promise of honesty felt like a lie. Our entire life together, our children, our home, it was all built on a foundation of sand. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted someone so completely, only to have them betray me in such a fundamental way? The questions swirled in my head, a furious tornado of confusion and heartbreak. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted her immediately or tried to understand? What would have been your first step? I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the papers strewn around me, my head in my hands. The thought of confronting her filled me with dread, but the thought of living another moment without knowing the full truth was unbearable. When Sarah finally returned home, I was waiting for her in the living room, the birth certificate and a few of the letters laid out on the coffee table. Her eyes widened in horror when she saw them, and the color drained from her face. "What is this?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, devoid of the emotion that was raging inside me. She didn't say anything, just stared at the documents, then at me, her eyes pleading. "Sarah, what is this?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I can explain," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Explain what, Sarah? Explain how you kept a child a secret from me for 20 years. Explain how you built our entire life on a lie." The words tumbled out, bitter and sharp. She finally broke down, collapsing onto the sofa, sobbing uncontrollably. She told me everything, her story punctuated by gasps and choked sobs. She had gotten pregnant in college, a fling with a boy who quickly abandoned her when he found out. Her parents, especially her mother, were horrified. Abortion was out of the question for her, so her mother arranged a private adoption. She was told it was for the best, that she was too young, too unprepared. Her mother handled all the details, ensuring secrecy. Sarah gave birth to Daniel, and with a broken heart, gave him up. She said she never truly recovered from the decision, but her mother convinced her it was for Daniel's own good to have a stable family. Her mother then maintained contact with the adoptive parents, getting updates and photos, which she would secretly share with Sarah. Sarah would then send money to Daniel's adoptive family, through her mother, to help with his upbringing, a silent way of being a part of his life. After her mother's passing, Daniel, who was now 20, had started asking questions about his biological mother. His adoptive parents, honoring their agreement with Sarah's deceased mother, had given him Sarah's contact information. He had reached out, and that's why she had been receiving the calls and the thick envelopes containing updates and letters he had sent. She was terrified, she said, terrified of telling me, terrified of how I would react. She loved me, she insisted, and she loved our children, and she didn't want to lose us. She had planned to tell me, she swore, but she just didn't know how or when. Her explanation, while painting a picture of a young, desperate woman, didn't erase the 20 years of deceit. The part that stung the most was that she had been actively involved in this secret for 2 decades, even while building a life with me. She was supporting another child, financially and emotionally, without my knowledge or consent. It felt like a double life, a parallel existence I was completely excluded from. I needed space. I couldn't even look at her without seeing the lies. I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend, leaving her alone in the house we had built together. The next few weeks were a blur of anger, confusion, and grief. My friend, bless his heart, listened patiently as I recounted the whole unbelievable tale. I spoke to a lawyer, just to understand my options. I even considered divorce. How could I stay with someone who had kept such a monumental secret? My children, Emily and Ben, were confused and worried. I told them Sarah was going through a hard time, which wasn't entirely untrue, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the full extent of the betrayal, not yet. After a lot of soul searching, and after countless desperate phone calls and texts from Sarah, I decided I needed to meet Daniel. Not just for myself, but for him. He deserved to know his biological mother, and he deserved to have answers. Sarah was hesitant at first, terrified of my reaction to him, but I insisted. I wanted to see the man she had kept hidden, the son I never knew. The meeting was surreal. We drove to a small cafe in the town where Daniel lived. He was a kind, intelligent young man, with Sarah's eyes and a gentle demeanor. He was clearly just as overwhelmed by the situation as I was. He had grown up knowing he was adopted, but he had only recently started searching for his birth mother. He was heartbroken by the secrecy, but also eager to understand. We talked for hours, Sarah, Daniel, and I. Sarah, tearfully, explained her past, her regrets, her love for him. I listened, my anger slowly giving way to a strange sense of empathy, not for Sarah's deception, but for Daniel's journey, and for the young Sarah who felt she had no other choice. The aftermath of that meeting was complicated. I couldn't just forgive Sarah and move on. The trust was shattered. But seeing Daniel, seeing the impact of the secrecy on him, made me realize that this wasn't just about Sarah and me. There was another person, a young man, who had been caught in the crossfire of her past. I told Sarah I needed time, a lot of time, to even consider a future with her. We went to therapy, individually and as a couple. It was a long, painful process of unpacking decades of lies, hurt, and unspoken emotions. Sarah had to confront her own shame and guilt, and I had to grapple with the profound betrayal. My relationship with Daniel, however, slowly began to blossom. He was my wife's son, and through him, I started to understand the depth of Sarah's past pain, though it still didn't excuse her actions. He's a good kid, and he deserved to know his family. Eventually, after many difficult conversations, tears, and a lot of therapy, I decided to try and rebuild my marriage. It wasn't about forgetting, it was about acknowledging the past, accepting that it happened, and working towards a future where honesty was paramount. It's a work in progress, every single day. The trust is still fragile, and there are days when the anger creeps back, but we're trying. We've slowly introduced Daniel to Emily and Ben, explaining the complex situation in an age-appropriate way. It's been a lot for them to process, but they've been incredibly understanding. Daniel has embraced his newfound siblings, and it's heartwarming to see them connect. This whole ordeal has taught me that even in the closest relationships, there can be hidden depths, painful histories that shape who we become. It's a testament to how complex human beings are, and how even good people can make incredibly difficult choices. While I still grapple with the betrayal, I also see the immense love Sarah has for all her children, including Daniel. The journey to healing is long, but we're taking it one step at a time. This experience has irrevocably changed me, changed us. It's a reminder that even when you think you know everything about someone, there can always be a secret lurking beneath the surface, waiting to unravel your world. Like this video if you were on my side, and think I handled this mess as best as I could. Subscribe for more stories like this, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole incredible mess in the comments section below. What would you have done? I'll see you all in the next story.